All right, welcome to the official Southern California Weather Force El Nino projection forecast, and it starts now. Welcome to SouthernCaliforniaWeatherForce.com. What we're looking at right now is basically a strong El Nino. And El Nino is basically means the Nino. I know you got that joke. Here's El Nino. El Nino is basically just warmer water along the equator. And what that's going to be doing is bringing in thunderstorms along the equator and then pushing that jet stream a little further north and all that tropical moisture. And that's what's feeding our area with the storm systems lately. Yes, it's El Nino. Now, what's going to be happening with this El Nino is we have two different types of El Ninos. We have a Modiski El Nino and, of course, an eastern-based El Nino. Now, the Modiski El Nino is where we have warmer water here in the central Pacific and cooler type water, but not cool, but a little cooler than here in the Pacific, here next to South America. And that brings a mixed bag of events. So we have been seeing that Modiski El Nino a few times this decade already, and that will not be this one. This one usually brings, the Modiski usually brings anywhere, from dry weather to wet weather. You can go ahead and flip a coin and go ahead and guess what you're going to do. And in fact, you at home, you can flip a coin and know exactly, hey, what's it going to do? It's going to be a dry or wet season. There you go, just guess it. But this one is an eastern-based El Nino. Now the eastern El Nino, basically, in the basin here, is more like a 97, 98 El Nino. In fact, it's more like a 82 and 83 as well. Those were the last strongest El Ninos. Typically, they occur every 15 or so years. So you're looking at 15 to 20 years for a stronger type El Nino. Now, how strong is this El Nino? This graph shows a 97, 98 El Nino. You can see the trend over the summer. We bumped up over it when we started getting the hurricanes in the area, disrupting the flow, got some trade winds weakening, and we're already up over at 2.4. Now, a lot of people are telling me right now on the site, they're saying that it's second in line because they're hearing it elsewhere, but it's not second in line. I go by static. They go by an average of every 3-month average. So right now they're saying it's second to the 97, 98 El Nino. It's not. It is first. We have broken the record of 2.3. It's a 2.4. So I'll get to why I do static instead of every 3-month averages right now. Last year, we had a weak El Nino, but briefly in December, it went to moderate El Nino. Briefly though, it went right back to weak. The reason why it did that is because we had a slight warming in the Pacific, a little weaker trade winds, and then here in the central basin, Modiski El Nino, that started to beef up a little bit during December. That's why we had a powerful storm coming to the area. I'm sure you remember that, the one that had the tornado in south central LA. So that right there was a Modiski El Nino. Briefly went to moderate, and then after that, in January, it went down to weak again. And then that's when we had less storm activity. So we had a weaker El Nino. And so that's why I go static, because had we not had that moderate El Nino in the area, then it's very possible that we wouldn't have had that strong storm last December. So, what's this El Nino going to do? That's why we're here, right? The El Nino this time is not going to be like 97, 98. It's not going to be like 82, 83. The El Nino this time is going to be much different. It's possible that we could have a 50s El Nino on our hands. And what that did was had cooler than normal temperatures. Cooler than normal temperatures for Southern California, while Northern California had slightly above normal temperatures. And that's what I'm thinking with this one. And the reason why for this is because of that. We had a blob of warm water right here just to the west of Oregon and Washington for many years now. That's weakening. You can kind of see it just a little bit, but it's weakening. And we have a cooler area of water in the north central Pacific. This area, just to the south of Alaska, is going to create a low pressure system just to the north of Hawaii. You're going to get a ridge, not along the coast where all the storms kind of deflected into the eastern half of the country. You're going to get a ridge, mainly probably at 140 latitude. And what that's going to do is bring in the storm systems well off the coast and then merge right here into our area of the forecast. Now, usually El Niños have drier than normal Pacific Northwest. Because we have this, a polar jet will start to infuse with the tropical jet. We'll have two jets working together with this system. And what that's going to do, of course, is bring cooler than normal temperatures with that polar jet working in there, and above normal precipitation for the entire Southern California area. Now, for the rest of California, we need that. We need the snowpack up there in Northern California. You are going to get above normal precipitation, and of course, you're going to get average kind of temperatures in the Mammoth area. So yes, you'll have a great ski season up there. Now, here's the interesting part. Because the jets are merging, and we don't have much of a blocking close to the land, it's not going to be a typical El Nino. We're going to have wetter than average conditions even in the Pacific Northwest. But yes, it will be warmer than average, but wetter than average will be across the entire West Coast. The fire hose, if you will, or the Pineapple Express as you know it, is going to be aimed at Central and Northern California, much like it was last year. How would it be more wider this time? So yes, we're looking at precipitation values being way higher, anywhere from 2 to 3 times as high. LA is usually averaging anywhere from 14 to 15 inches, much higher in the foothills, of course, and the mountains because of orographic lifting. I'll get to that after this. But it looks like we're looking at anywhere between 20 and 30 inches of rainfall with this season. We could even have a record season. We just don't know. And then it just deluges us with 60 plus inches. You know, you just never know. Now we got the temperature averages and the precipitation averages out of the way, which is really good for California, mind you. Let's go move on to snow. What's the snow potential with this one? Well, as you saw in the temperature and precipitation, we're looking at more snowfall. And here in Southern California and Central California, you had average in Central and below average here in Southern. So you're looking at an average snow level of anywhere from 5,500 to 6,000 feet. And that's really interesting in an El Nino year. Usually it's higher. With El Nino storms, usually get them over 9,000 to 10,000 feet. So this is going to be good for us. If you like your snowboarding or skiing, you go there, love the resorts. If you own a resort, of course, you're going to be enjoying it. So get out there and buy your season passes if you haven't yet, because I highly recommend that one with this season. Now, usually during El Nino storms, they're tropical. And so what happens is most of the forecasters predict a foot of snow. Now what happens, what I do is I don't look at static snow levels. I look at snow levels every 3 hours in the soundings. And what that tells me is how much warm air advection will come in. And what warm air advection is, from this animation you can see, is warmer air coming in from the south. So it could be, say, 28 degrees or so at 6,000 feet. And then you got the frontal zone coming in with that southerly flow. And then you get the warmer air from hundreds of miles south of here moving in at about 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. So it makes it here very quickly along the front from the south. And that bumps those temperatures from 28 over to 40 degrees. And those snow levels go from 6,000 feet to over 8,000 to 9,000, sometimes even 10,000 feet. So that's called warm air advection. So where forecasters can say that you either get a foot of snow and you only get 3 inches, now you know why. In fact, warm air advection busts a lot of snow forecasts because you can get all the snow above the snow level. So they're thinking 6,000 feet, right? And then all of a sudden, you get the snow level at about 9,000 feet because 3 hours along the front where most of the precipitation happens, that's where you bump the snow levels up, and you're sitting here with flakes in the beginning. You got rain in the middle of the front, and then you kind of end with cold air advection coming in behind the front with a few flakes. So you end up with much less snow than what was forecast. All right, Santa Ana wind potential. We haven't seen it yet. We had a few light offshore wind events. Now the Santa Ana wind potential is much lower with El Nino. And so far this fall, it has been behaving like an El Nino season. Usually, like I said, the ridge was along the coast. And here's the animation right now that shows that ridge dives storm systems into the Great Basin. Now there are 3 ingredients for Santa Ana winds. And that's thermal support, that's upper support, and that's gradient support. Now, thermal support is when you get the colder kind of storm systems diving into northern Nevada and Utah. and it makes the air very cold there, but it's still mild down here. So while it could be in the teens up there in northern Nevada, it could be around 50 or 60 down here. And that's called thermal support. All the wind wants to rush down off the basin in through the passes. Now upper support is when you still get the storm systems into the area, but you got the upper level ridge that has been haunting us for the last 4 years developing. And what that does is bring in the jet stream up and over Nevada and into Southern California. You got a combination of thermal support and upper support. Now you got 2 ingredients there. That's a strong event. And then you get gradient support. Now gradient support is basically the lower pressures in Southern California offshore versus the higher pressure in the Great Basin. So if you think about the higher pressure as the hill and the lower pressure downhill, that is going to be rolling a ball down the hill. And that's what it does with the winds. It rolls them down the gradient support through the passes, and it jets out like a rocket engine into our area. Those are the Santa Ana wind dynamics. We don't have that with El Nino as much. In fact, El Nino has a stronger upper level jet, and that makes it for less of a chance of a ridge developing along the coast to bring the Santa Ana wind dynamics into play. So we're looking at much less of Santa Ana wind potential. Yes, we may have a couple events out there, but other than that, it looks like that it's going to be very quick and very minor before the storm systems come in. So there's your Santa Ana winds. We're now moving on to frontal zone wind potential. We had one event last year. It was December. Remember I talked about that earlier? December 2014. It featured a very strong frontal zone that came into Southern California. And what that did was that was aided by a moderate El Nino. That came into the area. I issued a tornado watch the evening of, and we got a small tornado the morning after in the Los Angeles basin. Here's a video of that. Clearly you can see it was a tornado. Weak, but still a tornado. Strong winds happened with that front. It was a category 5 on my 1 through 6 scale. And it brought damaging winds to Vandenberg Air Force Base all the way down to San Diego. So a very strong squall line moved through the area. Frontal zone winds are going to be very similar to that one, but stronger because we do have the upper level jet stream in the area. We got an upper level polar jet, and we've got a tropical jet. And what that's going to be doing is once they're situated to the west of California, it will lower the pressure of an incoming surface low. And as that surface low starts to lower the pressures, we gain winds out of the south and southeast into it. If it's positioned to the San Luis Obispo area and it's very strong, we get very strong south and southeasterly winds into it, and those can range anywhere from gusting from 60 to even 80 miles an hour along the initial front. Averaging during these El Ninos is usually about 50 to 60 miles an hour on one of these storm systems. We could get gusts into the 100 mile an hour range along the front on one of the storms. Not all of them will have that. One of them. And that will cause blizzard conditions, of course, in the mountain areas. So yes, like I said, a lot of snow this year, but a lot of wind along the frontal zone. So if you're in the mountains, prepare for blizzards. We haven't seen them in a while, but prepare for them. They will happen this year, and they will happen often. So yes, as the winds hit the coastal areas, because it's most vulnerable, we got the flat ocean, of course, and there's no mountains out there. There's just a little, islands out there, Catalina Island, San Clemente. We got San Nicolas Island, and we got the Channel Islands out there. Not enough to disrupt the southerly flow pattern. So the winds are traveling with less friction, and when they hit the coastal areas, they are remaining strong along the front. It's not until they get inland into the Inland Empire, sometimes they weaken. In fact, it's not sometimes they do weaken when they come into the frontal zone. But it doesn't mean the Inland Empire will not see anywhere from 40 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts at times. Now those are winds along the frontal zone. Now what about the deserts? The deserts, usually with a La Nina pattern, we usually get a west to east flow. As the storm systems kind of miss us to the north. In San Francisco and anywhere in Northern California, they miss us to the north, but we get that westerly to easterly jet on the southern periphery of the trough. Now those storm systems are not going to be as prominent this year. We're going to be having more of a southwest to northeast flow, a south to north flow, and a southeast to northwest flow. So the areas that are going to be having a lot of wind are going to be Bakersfield, along the coastal areas, in the valley areas, and possibly in the high desert areas, mainly around the Victor Valley area. Lancaster, you're up against the mountains. So it's reversal from Santa Ana winds. The winds come up and over the mountains and then dive down into your area. Usually along strong frontal zones, you get very damaging winds in the high desert. And we're looking at that for this year. Tornadoes. All right, so where are the tornadoes going to be? Well, I can't tell you where it's going to be. I can't tell you how strong it's going to be. But what I can tell you is we will have tornadoes this year. Now you're looking at me like, hey, this isn't Kansas, this isn't the plains. Well, you know what? It's Southern California with an El Nino with tropical air. That has tornadoes. So what you're looking at is going to be that, again, I mentioned that strong surface low. That forms into the area. We get a strong southerly or southeast flow into it, atop a jet stream that's moving from west to east, and we get lots of shear in the atmosphere. Produces supercells, either ahead or along the frontal zone. And what that's going to be producing is low-level shear as well. And with that instability from the polar air, it produces thunderstorms producing tornadoes. So those are all the ingredients for tornadoes in Southern California. There are many areas of convergence in Southern California because of our topography. We have the strongest tornado alley in Southern California in the Los Angeles and Orange County Basin. Also the coastal areas, so Long Beach, LAX, all those areas over there. Yes, you're in the tornado alley as well. And there's a lot of people there. And if you're watching from there, just remember, you are in a tornado alley for Southern California. Now most of Southern California tornadoes a week, anywhere from EF0 to EF1. We have not had an EF4. I believe we've had maybe one EF3 somewhere, but we have not seen an EF4 and EF5. Now, what an EF4 and EF5 does would devastate the basin. We would have lives lost. I cannot tell you that we won't see anything like that this year because records only go back so far. So while you can hear elsewhere that we won't have a major tornado ever, they're only lying to you because records only go back so far. We don't know what the weather was like here in Southern California 2,000 years ago. We just don't. We could have had a lot of tropical air mixed in with the cold air loft like we're going to be having, and we've had stronger tornadoes. If this year behaves exactly like I think it will be, we may have a stronger tornado out there. Another area of tornado alley is going to be moving on east. We got the Elsinore Convergence Zone. We've all heard about that during the monsoon. Anywhere from Lake Elsinore, Menifee, Paris, Hemet, going just to the Banning area in Cherry Valley. Those areas are along the Elsinore Convergence Zone. You could get tornadoes there too. The dynamics are right, you'll get tornadoes. Another area we look for tornadoes, of course, is along the entire coastal area. We'll go from Vandenberg Air Force Base down to San Diego. That is a given, because that's where the front enters the area. But let's go a little further inland. Are there tornadoes possible in the high desert? Yes. Hesperia has had tornadoes before. Apple Valley, all that area, they've had tornadoes. So, what we're looking at is basically tornadoes almost in all convergence zones, including the ones further east in the Blythe area. So from maybe the northern Imperial County area, Desert Center, Blythe, in that kind of a general direction, you get a southerly flow out of the desert because there's nothing to the south of there. There's not many mountains. It is just the Gulf of California. Nothing's really disrupting the pattern. So you get tornado dynamics out there as well. We'll be watching that area too. All right, so thanks for joining. Do you have any questions? Well, when's it going to start? El Nino is going to start, well, it's already El Nino. You see this. That's El Nino. It's already started. So what we're looking at is when the effects begin. We've already seen the effects. When do those winter storms start hitting, the Pacific storms? That's what you want to know. Well, I said maybe the end of the month, but the 1997-1998 El Nino did not start until November. So what we're looking at is anywhere from the end of the month and Halloween to November. So if the pattern like this is not producing storms, by say about November 15th or 20th, I'm going to worry. That's when you should start to worry. Because most of the El Nino seasons have produced that around November 15th. By then we've had a stronger storm. All right, two more. Okay, so I know you're hearing it elsewhere that some El Ninos, some stronger El Ninos have not produced much rain in Southern California, while some have. But that is completely false. As you can see here, all 6 strong El Ninos over a 2.0 value, we're at 2.4 mind you, 2.0 value, have produced above average rainfall for Southern California. Now we're looking at Northern California, you can see 2 have not produced above average rainfall. But as you saw before on my map, I'm going with above average for the entire western coast due to the upper level jet stream dynamics, and especially where the jet position is going to be with this area of colder water, which has not been present in many of the other El Ninos because we're very warm elsewhere. So a lot of difference is going to be happening with this El Nino. It's more like a 1950s kind of event maybe. It's cooler, of course, but a lot more rainfall. Okay, one more. I'm sorry you're at home, you're probably not hearing it. We're not literally equipped right now to pass any kind of external mic around. Okay, what was being said is what can you do to prepare for, and are you scaring people? Well, you're seeing it on the news already. El Nino is here, the storms are coming. I've been saying it for months. It's coming, okay? I've been saying Super El Nino is coming, it's coming. It's already here, look at that, Super El Nino. What you want to do is don't be afraid. Do not be afraid, just be prepared. So remember that quote? Don't be afraid, be prepared. As long as you gather all your sources during a storm system, or even before a storm system, even if it's not me, fully. Don't even just look just at my forecast. A lot of people say it's just only my forecast, but don't look just at my forecast. I recommend you look everywhere. Find every source you possibly can, and just crunch it together and kind of, make light of what each of it is saying and kind of find an average, if you will. And then you'll be more prepared. So as long as you're prepared for this, there's no reason to be scared. As long as you've got some sandbags and you're in an area where it floods a lot. I know back in the 1997-98 El Nino, look at these pictures from Hemet. That's terrible. Hemet is basically inundated, and it didn't have as many people then. So you can only see what's going to happen this time if the projections come true. If you're in those areas that are flood prone, you need to have your sandbags and you need to have them now. Find out where you're going to get them in your own city. Each city is different. Local fire department usually is a good place to start. Go ahead and call them, or find your closest station and go drive down there and kind of find out what you need to do to protect yourself and your property. All right, thank you for coming on short notice, and I'm sorry for the mess a little bit. It's been hectic here getting the office going. Thank you for watching at home. This has been your El Nino presentation. My name is meteorologist Kevin Martin from SouthernCaliforniaWeatherForce.com. Stay safe out there, and remember, keep tuned to our stuff or wherever you can, and we'll get you through the season.